Meet me on the softer side. Meet me on the softer side. Softer side of your heart.
Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. You can find out about this and all of our other author events at www.skylightbooks.com, where you can also browse our inventory as well as order books online. You can also follow us on Twitter or even be our friend at facebook.com. If you'd like to talk to a real person, we can be reached at 323-660-1175. And don't forget, Skylight Books depends on listeners like you to help support us. So whether you're in our neighborhood or browsing online, buy a book or two to help ensure that we'll be around for a long, long time. Thanks and enjoy.
Let's please give a warm round of applause to one of my very favorite authors, Cecil Castellucci.
I just like saying the word outer space like over and over and over again because space is so cool. And I think that, I fell in love with stories when I saw Star Wars, and I fell in love with stories when I started reading science fiction for reals. So it's really a thrill to have I've done some short stories that are science fiction, but it's really a thrill to have my first bona fide science fiction novel out. So thank you so much for being here to celebrate that. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit, and then we'll have Steve come up, and I'll do a little Q&A with him, and then we'll open it up to you guys, and so you can ask me questions or you can ask Steve questions, and hopefully we'll have a very interesting conversation. And I think there are some other specialists here and that can weigh in if we don't have all the answers. But you could also ask about the book. Okay, so all you really need, I'm going to start from the beginning. And all you really need to know is that before I start here, that Tula Bain, who is the main character of the book, she's on a space station. She's a human colonist, and she saw some grains that is for their. They've made a pit stop at this space station, and she's seen some grains and supplies for their colony on the docks, and they're supposed to be on the ship. And she's a little concerned about that, and she kind of spoke up, and that was not taken very well by their leader, Brother Blue. So he says. I need you to go to the Brahar ship on Docking Bay 5 and make a delivery. But I want to help here, I said, with the load-in. The errand would take me away from the pre-boarding preparations. Do as I ask, Tula, Brother Blue said. And then he flashed that smile, the one that made you feel as though you were the only person in the universe. How could I have ever doubted that Brother Blue knew what he was doing? There are plenty of strong bodies to load, Brother Blue assured me. I had no choice but to obey his wishes as we set about for our final preparations. I took a bag heavy with fresh food, salts, and water from Earth to the docking bay with the Brahar ship and gave the bag to the captain. Its value was great, and I tried to ignore the desperate aliens who were begging for work near his ship. Tell him that she's fueled and ready to go, the captain said. I made my way back to join Brother Blue, my family, and the other colonists before reboarding commenced for the final leg of the Prairie Rose's voyage. I felt relieved to see that the docking bay had been cleared. The error had been corrected. I needn't have worried after all. I took a look around the hangar. We were nearly ready to go. I delivered the message to Brother Blue, who seemed to understand it, and he smiled at me and touched my face. Tula, for one so young, you've been such a help to me on this voyage, Brother Blue said, coming up to me as I stood with my mother and my sister, Biddy. Thank you, Brother Blue, I said, for the opportunity to be of service. We're very proud of her, my mother chimed in. Come with me, Tula. I have something for you, he said. A gift. A gift, I said. Good work must be rewarded. I looked at my mother and sister. They were nervous. My mother did not like space travel, although it was she who had decided to move the family off of Earth. Biddy was 3 years younger than I was and was frightened of everything. I'd rather stay here with my mother and sister, I said. I insist, Brother Blue said. It's all right, Mother said. Her pride was showing as the others took notice of the special attention Brother Blue was giving me. She nudged me forward. The higher I rose, the better it would be for all of us. We'll be fine without you for a little while. I followed Brother Blue to the hangar's anteroom, and there, stacked in the corner, were the bins of grain. "They're still not on board," I said. Surely this time he would explain to me why they were not on the ship. "You held such promise, Tula, but you have eyes that see in the dark," Brother Blue said. "It's such a disappointment that you had to exhibit this independent streak so late in the game. If I'd seen it earlier, I'd never have taken you under my wing." "I don't understand," I said. But instead of answering, it was then that he punched me in the face. "Why?" I tried to ask, my mouth filling with blood. He hit me again, and now I was too stunned to scream, and he did not stop until I was limp, and at some point my air mask was knocked off, and the atmosphere of the space station struck me as though it were another blow. It was only when he thought that I was dead that he moved away from me, into the hangar where the colonists were gathered, leaving me behind the forgotten cargo bins full of grain that had so concerned me. I wanted to groan, but my lungs ached. I wanted my mother, but I could not call out. I wanted to promise Brother Blue that I would not question his wisdom or mention the cargo bins ever again, but I knew better than to let on that he had not finished the job. I strained my ears to listen as he gave a speech to his followers. "Brothers and sisters of Earth, you are an incredible journey. I envy you as you set out to your new home. Circumstances have forced me to change my plan. I must deal with politics and data work that the League of Worlds requires." He explained that he would instead be heading to Bessin, a moon which served as the capital of the League of Worlds, to consult with the 5 major species and the other minor species members about new planets that the children of Earth were bidding for. He would then go back to Earth. He informed the colonists that he had bought a small ship and would leave immediately after the Prairie Rose left. I listened to more of his speech, but he did not mention rendezvousing with the colonists on Beta Grenade at a later date. That was a significant change in plan. Brother Blue always went with the colonists all the way to the planet for first landing day. Only when the first season was through and the colony was deemed as thriving would he go back to work to handle the coordinating and recruiting of the next batch of colonists. There was a collective moan of fear from the colonists. Brother Blue had promised he'd be there with us every step of the way. He had so often told us that he was the only one who could protect us on our journey from the perils of space, from aliens, from the humans left over from the generational ships who'd set out for the stars in the past, settled nowhere and wandered and roamed. They had grown too wild to join the Children of Earth colonies, and they were not welcome back on Earth. I wanted to stand up, but I could not move. And if I did, I was afraid that he would finish me off. Cowardice kept me quiet. He continued, hushing them like a soothing father. I know. It's disappointing to me as well. But you are the true pioneers. I am envious of your adventure. The first days on a new planet full of hope and possibility is my favorite part of the mission to settle the world that we aim to call home. I will think of you as the Prairie Rose heads to its new planet and wish you speed and light as you begin to grow and build and make your new home. Although EarthGov does not appreciate it yet, you are doing a great thing for humanity. And when times get tough, as we already see they can by our unscheduled stop here, remember that what you do, your courage, your strength, your perseverance will always be remembered. There was applause. Then I listened as the colonists began to board the Prairie Rose. Brother Blue was likely standing at the entrance to the ship, and I could hear him as he shook hands with every one of the colonists and wished them luck. Surely my family had noticed by now that I was gone and missing. I shifted my body and watched as best I could from behind the crates as my fellow Earthling colonists filed past the anteroom that hid me. They walked in order as they had been taught. They walked with their heads down as they had been taught. What I had long suspected was true. We only saw what we were told to see. But now I was seeing something else. Brother Blue was like a magician I'd seen once when I was young, distracting the eye from what he was really doing. I thought back to all of the times that he'd confided in me and realized that they were all tactics to keep me from asking questions. I'd been fooled. The grain had been the last in a long line of things that had bothered me somehow. His words always told a different story, a soothing story, a logical explanation for things that didn't add up. All along I'd known deep down inside that something was not quite right, but I'd been blinded by my desire for a position in the future of the Children of Earth. I'd been kept in place by not wanting to rock the boat. I would not make that mistake again. Though blurry, I watched as Brother Blue approached my mother and sister and heard him say, "Tula will be traveling with me, Mrs. Bain. She's too valuable a right-hand man for me to give her up now." "Yes, Brother Blue," my mother said. "We're so happy for her prospects. Oh, she'll rise high under my tutelage." And there it was. No one would suspect that it could be otherwise. My family would never know or have cause to believe that he would lie. Brother Blue stayed until the last colonist was on board. He stayed until the docking door swung and clicked shut with a hiss of air. He waited until the sound of the ship unclamping from the station came. Only then did he walk away. And from where I lay, I could see that he did not look disturbed, that he had just broken his word to 167 colonists in his care. He looked relieved. And then he was gone. No one would care about a dead body on the docking bay. I'd seen plenty of them. They were robbed and then disposed of by the rabble of aliens who looked for work on the few ships that docked. But I was not dead yet. I tried to adjust my weight to make some of the pain stop, and then dragged myself out of the anteroom into the hangar, as though I could somehow catch up with the ship before it left the station. But it was too late. They were gone. What was I to do now? My eyes caught sight of the Prairie Rose as it sailed by the window in the hangar. It moved so slowly that at first it didn't seem as though it were leaving at all. It was only when it began to shrink in size against the blackness of space that I was sure that it was leaving me behind. The Prairie Rose sailed on its edge, looking like a thin silver line. When it reached acceleration, it flipped up, ready to slingshot around the nearby depleted planet below and shoot out of the system in a light skip. It was a sight to see. The ship had 5 shiny points, its metal glinting in the glare of the weak sun. It looked like a tin star, the kind that I had seen in history books, the kind that officers of the law wore. I managed to lift my hand as though to touch the ship before it vanished from sight. Then the ship was gone, and so was my family. They had left me here on the floor of the Yertina Feray space station. That knowledge, that I was utterly alone, felt sharper than the beating. It made the pain in my body unbearable. Everything, the hangar, the window, and the ship's fading streak of silver, went black. Okay, so thanks so much. So that's chapter 1. Clearly she's alone, and some stuff is going to happen. There's a lot of aliens and not any humans. But let's talk about humans in space first, and our exploration of our solar system and our aim towards other points beyond. Please help me welcome Steve Collins. Steve Collins is an attitude control engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Most recently, Cruise ACS systems engineer for the Mars Curiosity rover. Steve has worked on numerous NASA JPL missions, including Epoxy, Dawn, Deep Impact, MER, Deep Space One, Galileo, and Mars Observer. In flight, Steve's job includes keeping the spacecraft pointed in the right direction, performing trajectory corrections, and figuring out what the heck just happened. When he's not, the rest of it is cut. But when he's not flying robotic spacecraft, he acts in the Caltech theater department. He's in a great band called Artichoke, and I think you race cars or something. You do some car racing. He's just basically the coolest guy on this planet and probably every other planet. So please welcome Steve Collins. So you sit over here.
There's aliens here.
I know.
Over there, and I will sit over here.
Okay, so first I wanted to have Steve come because I think as science fiction writers, and I know that there are some fiction and science fiction writers here in the audience, we get inspired because we look up and we're inspired by landing on the moon and Voyager and like all these things that just space because it's the coolest. And so I wanted to talk about sort of, the way in what we're actually doing and sort of what we imagine that we can do. So I guess my first question is, I wanted to find out, when did you decide to get involved with space stuff?
Get involved with space stuff. I have been fascinated with
space stuff since, Gemini, Apollo era, when I was 6 years old. I'm not sure if that was innate or if it was my parents setting me down in the front of TV anytime there was a space thing on.
Right.
But I've always been fascinated with that stuff. And I sort of, as I went through school, tried to make choices that allowed, the possibility to be an astronaut someday or be involved in the space
Right.
program. So I studied physics and math and stuff like that, And in college, the same sort of deal. I got a degree in physics, and I kept auditioning for shows and getting cast in things and going off and doing theater for a while, and then catching up on my physics curriculum. So
See, it's like we almost had opposite things, because I went to the high school performing arts where we studied acting all day, but I would be I should transfer to a military school so that I could become an astronaut one day, or I was first of all, I think for me the moment was when I guess I was 8 or something, and they launched Voyager, and I was like, what? And the whole thing, I was just this just was really cool. And the fact that we're still tracking it, and it's still sending signals back, and it's not even, it's kind of out, almost out,
it's just
barely out of the solar system. Is I just feel it's a part of me. And I think maybe a lot of people my age sort of feel like that, because it's we kind of grew, it's.
Yeah, you sort of, like your favorite TV show when you were a kid, you sort of take on, you own some of these projects. People that were just at the right age when Spirit and Opportunity landed.
Right,
you
exactly.
Feel a connection to those that's sort of special.
Right, or the curiosity now. I'm sure there are some of the young people here who are like, whoa, what? And it's they're Voyager, who cares? What is that?
Yeah, that happened a long time before I was even born. What is it?
But what I find really fascinating about something like Voyager, I'm jumping around here, but it doesn't matter, because it's just everything is interesting. Is that with Voyager, it's that technology. I mean, it's my phone is
your phone totally kicks ass.
Yeah,
that destroyed the microphone.
compared to Voyager, right? I mean, it's
oh yeah,
yeah. So
like a Commodore 64. I don't know if any of you remember what that is. Is totally kicks ass on Voyager.
Yeah. So it's it's so fascinating, because it's I think a lot of times people don't understand, with space books. Okay, just to bring it to fiction as well. It's people are they think that things can happen so fast, but it's space is really big, and it takes a long time. And
it takes a long time to get places. Yeah.
I was always fascinated with the fact that you guys have to keep some of the old technology around and working, just so that you can communicate with the stuff that's farthest out.
And so because space is really difficult, typically the technology we build into a spacecraft is old technology, even on the day we launch it.
Right.
Like when we built, Curiosity, the technology on it, the computers and stuff like that, are kind of 10 years or so behind what's in your cell phone or what's in your personal computer. And we do that because we're super conservative. We want to use something that has a proven track record. We don't want to, use the newest thing that they invented last year, and try and launch that to Mars and hope that it works. So it's old when we launch it.
Right.
And then if you use the same design, like I'm working on a project now to make, NASA said, build another Curiosity. We'll put a different science payload on it, but use the same landing system, use the same, suspension and mobility system and stuff, and we'll, figure out what exactly we're going to put on for science instruments. We said, okay, we'll go try and build one, and we try to go to the companies that make the components for Curiosity, and they're like, oh, we don't make those anymore. I mean, I guess we might have some parts back in the shed that we could build like 2 more. Is that enough? And so, it's a little bit of a struggle to even just going back that far.
Right. And that's not that far.
Yeah, it's not that far. Right.
Yeah. I mean, like with Voyager, what I think is really fascinating too is that there's that sort of mix of analog and, just analog, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Right. And I mean, like, I don't know, you probably, maybe but like, it's like when you look at that golden record and it's like, well, yes, aliens clearly will be able to build a record player. Like, but then that kind of makes sense because it's like, at least you can kind of crudely do that. But it's like, what?
Oh, I've got an idea. I know a way we could code pictures on a phonograph record.
Yeah.
And we'll send pictures that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what they did. I don't know if you've ever seen all this stuff, but the Voyager Interstellar record has sound on it, but it also has a prime number square thing that lets you reconstruct a bunch of digital pictures from the data that's on the record.
So cool.
Carl Sagan, very carefully tried to design all the pieces for that, and a group of other people, so that somebody that was kind of as smart as we are, could look at it and there was only one way to put it together, and that they would have a shot at being able to figure out what it was.
Right. I would not have a shot at being able to figure out what it was. I'd be like, I'm super excited. I want to figure it out, but I don't understand.
Like one of the things is they included a picture of the spacecraft, right?
Right.
So that you say, well, I got the spacecraft. Oh, look, the picture. Hey, that looks just like the
record.
spacecraft.
Right.
It shows a little record on it, so that must be how you decode the picture.
Right. Do they put something on that on like every spacecraft that they send out?
Yeah. Now they tend. There's lots of different things like that are various kinds of, objet d'art that go on the spacecraft. Curiosity has a sundial that is a combination of a color wheel so that you can make sure the pictures are properly color calibrated, and it also, you can use it to figure out how the spacecraft is oriented. And Bill Nye told a story at an event I was at the other day that said his dad was always infatuated with sundials, and so that's one of the reasons that Bill Nye and the Planetary Society pushed to have this sundial included on the thing.
And
so there's that, and there's typically some sort of a CD or something that has people's signatures on them and stuff like that.
See, that's so cool because it's like you don't know where it's gonna
end up. You could start getting spam from Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, that's right. Those buggers, whatever they are.
So you never put your email address on those things that are going outside Earth orbit.
What was the first spacecraft that you had to attitude adjust for? Or can you explain what attitude adjustment is?
So almost all spacecraft have some sort of a system on them that keeps the spacecraft oriented the right way. If you just took something and it was floating in 0G, it would just tumble kind of end over end at random. And so spacecraft typically have some sort of a system that keeps them pointed in one direction. Like if you have solar panels that you're using to power your spacecraft, you want to point those at the sun. And so you might spin the spacecraft so it's stable from the conservation of magnetic momentum, or you might have little thrusters on it that fire to keep it oriented the right way.
Thrusters.
Or you might have they have these things called reaction wheels, which are like a little weighted wheel, and if you spin the wheel one direction, it makes the spacecraft spin the other way. And so the stuff that I do is like the software and the hardware and keeping track of all the pieces that do that. Figure out how the spacecraft is oriented by using star cameras or sensors that can sense the sun, and then these actuators, thrusters, or reaction wheels or stuff like that too.
And what is a star camera? Is that something that sort of like it helps you sort of figure out what direction you're pointed in?
Yeah. If you go out, if you could, take a picture of the night sky and you saw the Big Dipper in it, you could go, oh, Big Dipper, Polaris, oh, that's north.
Right.
And basically, we have these instruments called a star sensor that do just that. They take a picture of the stars, and then they use a computer to recognize the constellation, the pattern of the stars, which is unique. If you look at 4 or 5 stars, any place in the sky, it's unique. And so we can figure out how the spacecraft is oriented using that.
And so what was the first spacecraft that you
So the first thing that I actually did operations on was a GPS. I think it was a GPS spacecraft. This GPS thing that tells your phone where you are so you can look up your traffic, the way that works is there's a constellation of, I forget now how many it is, dozens of spacecraft that are in orbit around the Earth. Not quite as high as this microphone.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
Send
this
out.
part.
Yeah, there we go. And it's out, so we'll do that. And not quite as high as where the communication satellites are, way up there at geosynchronous. But halfway up, there's this constellation, as kind of a little sphere of these spacecraft that have navigation transmitters on them. And they.
Oh, geez.
Well, that's why it's not
Here,
working.
do you want to?
Eject.
Okay.
Okay, I bet that'll work now. So those things send a little signal, your phone receives them, and it can listen to the signals from the different ones and figure out where you're at on the Earth. And so we launched a whole series of those, and I would go out when they launched them and make sure that in the case of the GPS spacecraft, there's a sensor that can see the sun on it, and we use that to, fire a rocket engine to put the spacecraft in the right orbit. And
Right.
so that was the first thing.
The first time that, even though I did not know that I had already seen your work, was that I watched the Deep Impact. So basically, they took a spaceship and they crashed it into a comet. And I'm obsessed with comets. I love comets, and so I was like, I'm watching that, and you could watch it on the internet. And so I watched that, and you helped with that, right?
Yep, I was keep the spacecraft pointed the right way, make the corrections to the trajectory.
And then smash it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was the main spacecraft that had a bunch of cameras and science instruments on it. And then there was this little mini spacecraft that was, it's the size of a coffee table or something with a big piece of copper in it. And it's sort of like a missile. It had thrusters on it and its own little navigation system. And a few days before we flew by the comet, we sprung it off the bottom of the spacecraft, and it locked on to the comet and tried to hit the comet, which it successfully did.
Yeah, I watched it. It was
And
pretty cool.
it was the first time we really got to touch a comet, because people don't, there's probably 5 or 6 comet nuclei that we have close-up resolved pictures of. I mean, comets are so tiny, they're just a few kilometers across, so from the ground you can't really see what the nucleus looks like. And so you have to fly a spacecraft by them and get close to them to get high-res pictures. So there's only 5 or 6 comets that we have resolved images of, and this is the first time that we got to poke it and see is it hard or is it soft or what? Because people don't know. It could be like a solid block of ice, or it could be like fluffy powder, powder snow or whatever. And it turned out it was very fluffy and powdery. We learned this over many of these flybys. Surprisingly, the nucleus, even though it's made of ice, is black. It's actually, a comet nucleus is blacker than you can make a flat black surface with spray paint.
Wow.
Because it's, the ice gets boiled off and leaves the dust behind.
That's amazing. What has been your? Okay, I have so many questions, but is it more difficult to fly something that's closer to Earth or when it's going far away? So when you went to Mars, is that easier or more difficult than, let's say, a lady or gentleman who was like, piloting a space shuttle when the space shuttle was in orbit or in space?
Or
how is it different?
There's a lot of differences between a human space flight thing and something that's deep space.
Right.
I mean, the first most obvious thing is something that's at Mars is at least like 20 minutes away in terms of if we send a command, it takes at the speed of light, the radio signals 20 minutes to get to the spacecraft to make it do something. So you couldn't, have the pilot sit here on Earth like they fly a UAV and, have them land on the surface of Mars in real time because it's a, 40-minute round trip. They couldn't react fast enough. So that means that something that's going to land on Mars has to be robotically autonomous. It has to be like it's going to land. The computers are all going to do it all. You can put a pilot in a space shuttle, and she or he can land the thing on a runway or go fly up to a space station and creep up to it and make little corrections as they're flying up to it.
Right, because it's like in real time.
It's in real time.
Yeah, it's like right away.
Yeah.
Like with my book, one of the dreams in science fiction is to go to deep space. That's what we write about mostly. I mean, obviously there's a lot of near solar system science fiction as well, but or stories of astronauts and things like that are Earth related or aliens coming here, but there's also like a great tradition of sort of how do we get out. So first I want to ask you, what was your favorite spacecraft to fly so far? And second, was there anything that you actually had to, was there any moment that you actually had to, be like, oh no, that star is on the wrong side or anything like that?
I think of them as my children.
They're all your favorites.
They're all my favorites.
Well, they must all be slightly different.
And they're all very, very different. On all of the spacecraft I've dealt with, they always surprise you and do weird things that you didn't expect, and you don't understand why that's happening. And they occasionally, don't send down a radio signal today, and you go like, Mr. Spacecraft, where did you go?
Wake up.
And usually it's the people that are running the radios and stuff like that said, oh yeah, we forgot to plug in it was us. Don't worry. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's a real problem. The spacecraft typically have self-protective mechanisms in them so that when something funny happens, the spacecraft will try and protect itself. And the way it does that is it turns off your telemetry, and changes to a much lower data rate, and it does that so that no matter which way the spacecraft is pointed, you can still talk to it a little bit, and it will often reconfigure the spacecraft so it's not using your fancy star camera, it's just using this super simple one little chip solar cell thing to measure where the sun is, which is less likely to have a failure than a complicated star camera that has computers and lots of complexity in it. So lots of crazy things happen.
Yeah.
Every spacecraft that I've dealt with is really a one-of-a-kind thing. It's sort of like going to the auto parts store and buying a wheel from one kind of a car and a starter motor from a different kind of car and an engine block from something else, and cobbling them together into a car and trying to drive that. I think I'll go to the tip of South America in this thing. Okay, see you guys later. And, so you're going to have problems because, it's you never built one quite like
one
this
wheel
before.
Is bigger.
One wheel is bigger, and it's a little bit weird.
How do we get, okay, so we've got Voyager he went out, 35 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A long time.
A long time ago. Yeah. So long.
Before the time of the beginning.
Yeah.
Before your puny
now
sun
that's
burned
the farthest thing, but it's the oldest. It's not as sophisticated as what we sent to Mars.
Right.
So how do we get out? How do we get faster? How do we get Do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
like, how do we get faster?
It turns out faster is really, really hard. There's things that are easy, like adding computer power is comparatively easy. It's a young, new technology. We've just invented these microprocessor chips, and there's this thing called Moore's Law, which says that, I forget what the number is now, but every 10 years the computing power goes up by a factor of 100 or something. Doubles every 18 months. Okay.
There you go.
That's
Thank you, sir.
the classic statement of Moore's Law. That's not true of rocket engines. Rocket engines are ancient technology built by the Chinese, and they're limited by thermodynamics and chemistry. And so making a better rocket engine is kind of a hard problem. And in order to go around the solar system fast, there's the speed at which we go around the solar system, like Voyager, or it takes us 7 or 9 months to go to Mars. That is if we throw the rocket with the minimum, the smallest oomph that we can give it, it takes that long to get there. That's like I threw a baseball and it did a curving arc to home plate, right? How do you get a baseball from home plate to center field faster? Well, you have to throw it faster.
Right. And then you need more power.
And you need more power, and you need a bigger rocket engine somehow. And you need to go there in a kind of an inefficient way.
Right.
So it turns out going faster is hard until someone invents warp drive. That's why that's a staple of science fiction.
Yeah.
Or they invent some magical, to me as an engineer, propulsion technology, ion drive that are huge,
Yeah, because one of the problems when you're a science fiction writer is that there is no faster than light technology. Like you can't actually, So for example, like the part that I read, I tried to sort of say when the Prairie Rose flips up to the side, I'm interested in sort of solar sails, and that's sort of what I imagine that it is. Although I'm sure I'm doing it totally wrong, but I also know that sometimes you can whip around a planet and get some speed from from that.
That's a trick we use all the time.
Yeah, and so
that's how Voyager got slung out of here by whipping around Jupiter.
And even Juno, right? That just whipped around Earth to go out there, right?
Yep.
So so one of the things that I tried to do in my book, even though I do a lot of it incorrectly, is like sort of get inspired by correct science, sort of correct science, which is we actually do use planets to have acceleration, or solar sails are something that NASA is thinking. I think they're going to do one like in 2014 or 2015. They're already working on that.
There have been solar sail experiments, and there's a lot of people working on, how do I make a solar sail that'll fold up and go in a spacecraft this size, that's small enough that a solar sail could do a lot.
Yeah. So, but until we have that faster than light technology, we're really limited about how far we can go. Things take a long time. Voyager is still sort of in the bubble of the solar system.
Yeah. I made the point that rocket technology is sort of a mature technology, and there's some laws of physics there that kind of are blocking our fantasies. But we've been wrong about that before, right? If you'd asked H.G. Wells about, is there going to be a planet-wide, transport mechanism that has people flying around little metal tubes, he would have gone, not so much.
Right.
That I don't see any way. That seemed fantastical. Oh, you'd have to invent materials that don't exist, and what could you propel this with? A steam engine could never go into the air. We've been wrong before about that stuff, and that's one of the great things that science fiction does, right? Is it sort of, it lets you imagine like what you want to do, and then how exactly it gets done kind of gets figured out at another level.
Yeah.
The analogy that I have for that is like I play soccer as one of the crazy hobbies that I have. And when you get a corner kick, somebody kicks the ball to you and you're trying to hit it with your head and knock it in the goal. you have to kind of believe that it's possible
Right.
that guy can get the ball
To your
over here-
head.
to your head, and you have to believe that you can run to wherever the ball comes,
Right.
and that you can hit it in such a way that it's going to go in the
Into the
net.
goal, right.
And you sort of hold that,
Right.
the fantasy of that
Yeah.
in your head
Yeah.
when you're getting a corner kick. And if you don't do that, there's no way you can ever do
Yeah.
a corner kick. But if you do that, then
It's totally
one
possible.
time out of 10,
Yeah.
you can actually do a
Yeah.
corner kick. Your body somehow magically figures out how to actualize the thing that you've envisioned in the fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think that happens on a much grander scale with science fiction
Yeah.
and technology. Somebody writing a television show imagines these scanners that you can just go in and go.
Right. Right.
It looks like your arm is broken, and
and then someone tries to make it.
Well, yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
How could we do that?
Yeah,
I bet
yeah.
there's a way to do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's really true. I think that's one of the sort of glorious things about sort of space travel. And obviously right now, I know like when I was growing up, when they said Voyager, they're like, we're in the space age. But really now, it's like we've just, like when I was growing up, we were just beginning to explore our solar system. We hadn't really taken those great pictures of everything yet. And now we can see the steam jets coming out of the moon of this planet, and whoa, the chemistry of this ring or whatever. It's like it's so incredibly amazing that right now we're really in like the space age, because we're really exploring.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of phases of it, right? There's the I took pictures of it from, or there's the I looked at it with my tube
Yeah.
that has two lenses that a guy
Right.
in Italy polished for me, and I saw that, Jupiter has some little dots that are going around it, right?
Right.
That was step 0,
Right.
And then, it became, now I can launch rockets, I can get them
Right,
into Earth
right.
orbit. Oh, I can launch something and it'll go all the way to
Right.
Mars. Step 1, I'll fly by Mars and take pictures when I go by. Oh, then I'll go there and I'll go into
Right.
orbit and stay there for a while and take pictures. Oh, then I'll go there and maybe I can go from orbit and drop something down and have it land
Right.
on the surface. And then, I'll take samples up and I'll analyze them.
And then I'll have a tea party there.
I'm going to
It'll be
step
the
right up
best.
here and cough.
Oh yeah, do it. I think that space is super cool, and that's one of the reasons why I like science fiction so much. And as you can tell, I'm a big space geek, and I'm proud of that. Okay, so I think maybe I'll just open it up to questions now. If anybody has any questions for me or for Steve. Javi?
I just have a question for Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about the components that go into the ships, and then some of them aren't being made and stuff like that, right? Are they all purpose-built for your ship, or have you had to repurpose something from some other object or some other device? And if so, what would we be surprised to find in a spaceship?
The tubes in the Curiosity lander suspension were made for us by a company that makes graphite composite bicycle parts. So, they're not bicycle parts, but they're made by a company that specializes in making graphite fiber tubes and stuff. And they use the technology for bonding those into, like they bond a carbon fiber bicycle frame into the lugs and stuff. There's lots of things like that, where something that was designed for something else gets used in the space business. A lot of stuff is tailored for us just very specifically because we have very specific needs and have very thin margins, right? I mean, the spacecraft has to be as light as possible, use as little power as possible, be as reliable as possible, and all of those things fight each other, vigorously during the design process to build the whole spacecraft.
Yes, Clifford. Hi.
I haven't read the book yet, but I have a copy. So you mentioned lots of aliens. So I was curious, did you have fun designing aliens, and did you talk to biologists or astrobiologists about designs, or did you just go crazy?
I didn't talk to astrobiologists, but I'm really fond of taking Coursera classes right now, which is massive online college classes. And I actually took astrobiology from the University of Edinburgh with my mom. We took it together as like a little bonding thing. Obviously they're not studying aliens, that we're meeting and stuff like that, but sort of thinking about sort of how, like what is the origin of life? What is our definition of life, and all of that stuff? So that was just sort of to spark things. And then I really wanted, for example, one of the things that I did was I made a base atmosphere on my space station. That's sort of a base atmosphere that, like, the aliens could or couldn't breathe.
Oh, that's great.
But then they have like nanites in them that regulate the gases in their lungs. So I really wanted all the aliens to be very, very different, and to respect the fact that aliens will likely come from very different kinds of environments.
And so that was sort of a compromise, huh? And that's why she was wearing a mask.
Exactly. That's why she's wearing a mask at the beginning, and then she gets exactly.
A good atmosphere
not for her. Yeah. And then she gets nanites, and then she can breathe. But that way, it's like, because I didn't want to have like a space station full of aliens wearing masks, because you can't see their cute faces, So it's like little things like that. So yeah, it was fun, and I wanted to make them very alien. So Heckleck is one of the aliens. He's a hort, and he's sort of like a insect looking, and that's sort of a big tradition in science fiction to have like a sort of insect kind of one. And then I have like a guy who's he's got like he's the most human looking, in the sense that he's got the most human looking eyes. Everyone else is like, I don't even know where your eyeballs are. I'm just going to look at this area, and like maybe that's what, I'll look in your mouth. Maybe that's where I'm supposed to look. But because I wanted there also to, like, and the conceit that I had with that guy was that, like, humans and lore they're on they have the same kind of sun, and so I just imagine that they sort of evolved in a similar way, that the planet was in the same Goldilocks kind of zone and stuff like that. So yes, it was totally fun, and I tried to make them very different. I sort of used to say, like, oh, I didn't want to just slap an extra mouth on someone and make that an alien, but then I totally slapped an extra mouth on someone, so it's a little bit of both. But, yes?
I had a question for Steve. I was wondering if you had any favorite sci-fi novels yourself, or if anything you've ever read in the world of science fiction has inspired or influenced your work in that sense.
Oh, that's a good question.
Wow. I'm trying to think of sci-fi. I mean, as a kid, I remember reading Dune, and that being very influential. Not so much from a science fiction, technology perspective. I read a lot of astronaut biographies, which, were good. Recently, and this is not, it's sort of science fiction to me. It feels like science fiction. I've been reading the Patrick O'Brien, Age of Sail, Napoleonic, sea vessel stuff, which feels very familiar to me. Operating when you're operating a spacecraft, it's sort of like going to sea, and there's a captain, and there's, the crew has their different roles that they do, and you go through these adventures, and the ship breaks, and you have to fix it, and it became clear to me after reading those, okay, Star Trek was based on Horatio Hornblower, which is set in kind of the same era. They're in a big ship. They go to these various islands. They meet weird people on the islands, and so that chain I'm kind of traveling back the other direction through.
But it's so interesting because, like, I just got this tour by the U.S. Navy. They do this thing for writers where they take, writers on, like, to, the submarines and stuff, just to see it. And I did it specifically because I was like, I think maybe this would be helpful for writing science fiction,
absolutely. Operating on a submarine is like being on a spacecraft,
right?
Right?
Totally. It's so weird. Yeah. Yes, Sheree?
Two questions. The first one is, so you talked about the light skip and sort of slingshotting around the planet. I wonder if either of you would sort of explain how that actually works and doesn't send you back in time like it does in And second, personally, I'm terrified of space and the idea of, like, suffocation and claustrophobic, the idea of being able to take me out is horrible to me. But both of you are earthbound, would you, given the chance, go into space?
Ooh.
So, going into space, I when I was much younger, was yes, yes, yes. Kind of, as I got older, I was like, I have kids that I have to worry about. No, no, no. And now I'm sort of kind of getting back on the, yeah, if somebody came along and said, yeah, I'd be willing to take a risk of that. I mean, right now, the risk level for that is pretty high. But boy, it would be such an experience. The gravity slingshot thing. So imagine Jupiter going in its orbit around the sun. If you throw a spacecraft right behind Jupiter, just you shoot it out away from the sun so that it goes right behind Jupiter after Jupiter's gone by. It'll bend the spacecraft's trajectory, and it will slow Jupiter down a tiny little bit, and it will speed the spacecraft up a whole lot. It basically uses the ratio of the gravity interaction of the spacecraft and Jupiter, uses the ratio of the mass of Jupiter and the spacecraft to do what you would do in a roller rink or in an ice rink where you are going in a circle and you pull somebody by you. And so you can steal a little energy from Jupiter and give it to the spacecraft. And that's how all the gravity slingshot stuff that we do works.
I would go into space. If you guys buy a lot of books, then I can buy a Virgin Galactic ticket. So spread the word. I'm ready. Yeah, I'd be totally terrified, and I would probably have a heart attack on my way up there, but I'd still go.
Let me just touch the time thing. There may be some general relativity thing that if you do that, it slows your clock down a little bit. I mean, there's...
You're slowing down the planet.
Yeah.
Slightly. Does that affect people on the planet?
Well, if you did it with something the size of Mars, it would. But, we're not... The amount that we affect Jupiter's orbit, like I say, it's the ratio of Jupiter's mass to the spacecraft mass, and things much bigger than our spacecraft fly by Jupiter at random all the time anyway. So there's that much chaos already intrinsic in the solar system. So I don't feel like that's an environmental crime, if that's what you mean. I mean, it could be. It's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. Are we messing up the solar system by using gravity assists, right? Yeah, maybe, but that some asteroid flew by behind Jupiter the next month. We don't know the future that well anyway.
We're not doing it that often right now.
That's right.
I mean, it's
true.
Right?
But that awareness of we're doing this technological thing, we thought of, it's a great idea. Oh, but it really messes things up over time. Oh, we fly these jet planes in the stratosphere. Yeah, it's great. Oh, but it leaves aerosols up there, which are changing the amount of light reflected from the Earth's atmosphere.
It's always something.
It's great that we now have that awareness, at least some of us, to ask those kind of questions. Oh, if I dump this stuff out, it'll just go in the ground, right? Oh, wait, that's where our drinking water came from. So that's good.
So maybe 3 more questions, and then we'll... okay, so I saw Scott first.
So same, I'm going to ask both of their questions, but different.
Okay.
Light skip.
Yes.
Have you envisioned the light skip working? What was your question? Oh, sci-fi novel inspired you. What sci-fi novel inspired you?
For me, Gosh, well, Dune, I would say that was because that's like a deep space novel when they, with the spice and the traveling and all that. That was his solution for deep space travel. The Foundation series, anything by Ray Bradbury, the Tripod Trilogy by John Christopher, anything by James Tiptree Jr., C.L. Moore, Citizen of the Galaxy by Robert Heinlein. I don't know, I'm blanking on everything, but a lot of stuff that I liked a lot.
I read a lot of Larry Niven.
Oh, yeah, Larry Niven World, right? Yeah.
And the detective, he has a whole detective novel sort of series.
Yeah.
Gil Hamilton, I think, isn't that?
Yeah,
Larry
didn't read
Niven?
that one. And I'm constantly reading that. Light Skip, I just imagined that somehow something happens when they sling around, and light happens, and you just go super fast, and then you're somewhere else. That's the Light Skip.
So, talk a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to the technology
Yeah.
question, holding your feet to the fire. What was the dramatic purpose? Could talk a little bit about what the why you had to answer that guy's question.
Well, because
what was in it for you to do that?
because I wanted it to be like ocean voyages of the old days, where it would take a few months to get somewhere. But I didn't want it to be an intergenerational spaceship. I wanted the aliens to be able to have a society that they could deal with each other, and that it was not too long to get some. It was long, but it wasn't too long to get somewhere. So in that way, you had to fold the amount of time that people go from solar system to solar system, because stars are far.
Right. It's interesting that we have a reference story about that, which is this, age of sail traveling around the world, or
Right.
steamship traveling
Right.
around the world, which takes weeks to months,
Right.
or you would go on a voyage that takes a year,
Right.
or 2 years,
Right.
or 3
You go
years,
on
and
your
then
European,
come back.
yeah, exactly, on
And-
your tour.
So we in Western culture at least have journeys of that length, and I think you've done a thing that's pretty common, is we have constructed
Right.
that
Yeah.
that pace, that
Yeah.
tempo into something about the scale of the human lifespan.
Yeah.
And
Because you have to do it, because you want it to make sense, but then you also need to make it you need to make it actually be real. So it's okay, so Tula starts off the book and she's 14, she's almost 14, and then, after the first 50 pages, she's 16, 17, because time has passed, because it takes a long time for governments to move, and people to get to places, and battleships to arrive from one part of the galaxy to the other. So I needed to have that sort of time thing, but I didn't want it to be 50 years later she's like an old lady, and because that's not too sexy, and also not young adult fiction. So maybe Damon.
So is
Oh yeah, Chuma. We'll end with Chuma.
is Gravity going to win on Sunday?
I hope so. I loved that movie, so I'm rooting for Gravity.
The visual effects were amazing in it. I saw a tweet from one of the space astronauts that's on the
so
space
did
station.
And he said he just watched
that said
it.
that he's sitting up on the space station watching Gravity.
What did he say? He said I'm thinking of it as emergency preparedness.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it as I'm gonna bill it to training or something.
Yeah, bill it to training. Yeah, that was it.
Comment, not a question. We saw Gravity and then saw All Is Lost, both in the same week. That Robert Redford. Have you guys seen that?
I didn't see that. It's about voyages. Yeah.
Yep.
Basically the same movie. For anyone who's seen both.
Oh, fascinating.
The same movie.
One's on the ocean and one's
Oh, that's fascinating. Have to watch them.
space and oceans. Mm-hmm. So we'll end with Chuma.
So I just wanted to kind of dovetail off of the nautical theme that we have going here. I fly sailplanes, and I sail a lot too. I grew up sailing, and then I started doing this, and I noticed that the energy is basically the same. It's just the matter is in a different form. So, to me, my question is kind of a two-parter. One, can you extrapolate that on a space level? Like if you go from water to wind and gas, is there something, solar flares or electron storms or whatever that are happening in space that could act or behave in the same energetic way that it does on this planet? And two, is there a division or a department of NASA that is actually just focusing on how we can develop propulsion systems or sails or whatever it may be that can power these ships over great distances over great periods of time?
Well, solar sails are a little bit like that, right? Because they're trying to capture sort of the heat.
The energy of the light. Yeah, I mean, your question kind of raises a whole bunch of different things. In general, stuff in space is very easy to predict, and not easy to predict, but it has a there's not that much weather. I mean, there's a thing that's called space weather, which is driven by how many solar flares the sun puts out and stuff like that. But it's not a strong effect. It's a very, very weak effect. The amount of sunlight that's coming out of the sun is pretty much constant. Gravity is, knowable and modelable and very constant. So most of those effects lack something that I think is common to sailing and flying a sailplane, which is, the wind changes on a moment-by-moment basis, and the waves are different. And in a sailplane, every place you go, there's a little bit different lift off of this ridge or that ridge, or the wind direction's different. And those things are beautifully scaled intricacies that a human brain can learn to process and learn to sail, and learn to fly, ridge lift, and that sort of stuff. Or there's probably lift over there on that parking lot, I'll go fly over there. I sort of feel like there's not that same sort of. Space is different in a certain kind of way. I mean, there's some of that, but it takes place more in our mathematical models when we engineer things. The closest thing I can think to that is there are some kind of crazy, tricky, bizarre orbits. Like you can launch from here and circle around the moon in just the right way at the right time of year and escape from the Earth. And use very little fuel to do it, and wander off around the Earth's orbit around the sun and go other places. So, and those things you find by doing these sophisticated simulations and stuff, but it's not quite as tangible as in this moment, sailing and flying a sailplane. Yeah. But I mean, there's lots of physics going on out there, and we, are learning about how to exploit it to do different things. I mean, one of the areas that there is a lot of crossover and that there's a lot of a challenge to is landing on Mars, the atmosphere of Mars, and modeling the atmosphere of Mars. Mars's atmosphere is just thick enough that it's a problem. You can't just use a lunar lander and just use rockets and land. And you need the atmosphere's help to slow you down, but it's not quite thick enough to really do it with a parachute like you can do on Earth. And so that's why Curiosity has this combination, has a parachute that goes for a while, and then we dump the parachute off and use these rockets to do the landing at the end. And that's the complexities of the Martian atmosphere. If it's dusty, how does it change? And that stuff feels more like weather at sea.
Is there a division of JPL or NASA that is just focused on propulsion systems? Or
yes, I mean there's various fields of expertise at different NASA centers that focus on different things. Planetary entry and modeling the Mars atmosphere and how to do that sort of stuff. A lot of that is done at JPL. Other centers, specialize in how do I build a rocket engine, how do I build an electric propulsion, ion rocket engine and stuff like that.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming out to my launch for my book. And also for Steve, thank you so much for coming and talking about things that I'm so passionate about, which is space. I guess Carrie can say it, but you can buy your book over there. Send me onto the Virgin Galactic spaceship. Just as a little incentive, there is actually a misprint in this first edition, so it's kind of like that Jenny upside down stamp. You know, if you get this one, it's maybe one day it'll be super valuable.
Collectible.
Yeah, collectible.
Hey,
so
before we quit,
Yeah.
can I just do this? Can I ask? Are there any kids here that have a question that they want to ask?
yeah,
Can we just,
that's a good. Yeah, absolutely.
Can we just take a
Kids.
couple minutes if there's special dispensation to encourage kids to bark their questions out at us as well?
Any kids with questions? I'll name you.
You can if you don't want to do it in front of a room full
Yeah,
of people.
come up and talk,
Come
yeah.
up and ask one-to-one.
Yeah. That's a good thing. Yeah, Steve will be up here, and you can ask him questions too. And then I'm just going to announce one last little thing is that so the reason why I had anybody draw any aliens and stuff like that, I have 3 20-sided die. One of the things that I did for this book for Tin Star is that I actually created a True 20 role-playing game mini adventure where you can interact with the characters in a game, and it's going to be launched on Saturday. And so if you give me one of your aliens and your email address, I will email you specially the mini adventure role playing game because it's going to be awesome. So that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you to Skylight Books. Thank you, Steve. Thanks.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can check out this and all of our other great podcasts at www.skylightbooks.com. Today's music was provided by Fragile Gang. You can check them out at MySpace, Facebook, and the iTunes Music Store. Thanks for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.